What's going on, everybody? This is Tim Hurley. I am here with Kevin Nolan, who is, for lack of better terms, a utility guy for Lainey Wilson right now. What's going on, man? How are you?
Not much. How are you, man? Thanks
We're-
for having me. It's an honor. I don't know. I feel like you should be talking to someone far more qualified than myself, but I'm happy to be here.
Not at all. So the whole point of this podcast is to kind of showcase the people that I believe need a little bit more love and attention, that don't get all the credit they deserve. You definitely fall into that category. And I got to ask you right off the bat, how many instruments are you actually playing right now for Lainey? And then you're also in your own project, which we'll definitely touch on as well. So I didn't mean to just to shadow you by saying you're only a utility guy, because you're doing a solo gig as well. And but I want to hear all about it. So how many instruments are we dealing with currently?
I think it's too many is the number. For me, it always comes back to the electric guitar, kind of as home base. But really, over the years, a lot of my work in Nashville and other places I've lived has ended up being on the bass guitar. Which I don't play with Lainey anymore, but all the other stuff, if it's got strings, it's not that far away from a guitar that I couldn't figure out something with a little bit of time. And then the piano thing just kind of developed over a number of years of mostly just procrastinating when I was in college, and there was always be a piano in the practice room, and kind of pretend to be a New Orleans jazz piano player for enough years, you start to be able to play a couple chords, here and there. But
speak for yourself.
Mostly just a fan of always been a huge fan of organs and electric keyboards and whatnot, and that's really like a huge passion thing more than anything. It's kind of funny sometimes sitting down at the riser with Lainey and looking at all these, keyboards. It's like it definitely has become kind of, a dream type of job. They say dress for the job you want, and this is certainly that kind of situation for me. So just, grateful and blessed.
You posted a picture on your socials, and the tag was a spaceship. And I looked at it. It gave me anxiety just looking at this thing. I think there were 3 keyboards, at least 3 guitars. I think there's a mandolin in there and a harmonica. I mean, was that for a Lainey show, or is that a different project?
That was for Lainey. That's what it's at right now.
Was I accurate in the tally there? Was that right?
Yeah, I don't think you missed anything. Yeah, I mean, on a lot of these gigs, they might throw some of that stuff in a track and you'd hear it in the background, but we kind of just figure if we got all those tools and toys at our disposal, let's try to use them. And I'm not saying it couldn't be more efficient, but we try to have some fun with it.
It's got to be meaningful to you, though. And when for our listeners, when you say to track, we've talked about backing tracks before on this show. A lot of times there are a lot of instruments that you hear in a recording, and it's just not feasible to bring those instruments to a live performance. But you're saying, I mean, you're playing all of those instruments on stage, obviously not simultaneously, but how much of a difference does that make for a live performance when it's the real instrument versus somebody hitting play on backing tracks?
Well, I think a lot of the players certainly would tell you that it makes a world of difference. And I'm not discrediting any of that. I think at the end of the day, what different styles of music call for, I think, different guidelines. I mean,
I think you're being very diplomatic at the moment.
Well,
as a musician, you got to feel like the real music, the real instruments have to be a little bit more impactful than the backing tracks.
Yeah, I think certainly with Lainey's stuff, it's a lot of guys letting loose on these records, not so much like something that you can just kind of program and then drop all over the place. And I'm not knocking things that might sound a little bit more like they're cool in that way. I think whatever it is, if it's being musical, I'll give it a shot. And at the moment, we certainly try to pull off all that we can with our band. But if I go to a crazy pop show, it might make more sense for that stuff to be in the track than 70 keyboard players playing synth up there. So
Well,
anyway, you
sorry, go
know,
ahead.
no, I was already rambling. So
No, you're good. I mean, I was gonna say, seeing Lainey Wilson live is definitely a bit of a different type of show than what some might consider pop country these days. It definitely has a more organic feel to it. What's your background in music? Did you come from a country background? You mentioned New Orleans, you mentioned jazz.
so really more of my background, and my brother Matt plays drums with Lainey as well, and we've got a few projects going together. A lot of our background was rock and roll. We very lucky with our dad was a huge music fan. Got us into Little Feat, Steely Dan, Beatles, Stones, all that stuff, which I still think is kind of the top of the mountain in a lot of ways. I can't leave out Mom because I definitely have fond memories of driving around in her car listening to oldies radio. You remember the oldies radio stations?
Absolutely.
So just like all that Motown stuff. Whether or not I loved it as a little kid, it kind of seeped in, and now I wish you could find oldies radio. But we found country music through a band we played with for about 10 years was called the Morrison Brothers Band. It was a local band up in the Maryland, DC area, Northern Virginia. And we had been, kind of doing the bar scene for a couple of years. And one day there was two other brothers in that band, and they brought to rehearsal this kind of country song. And they had been big, like Zac Brown fans right when he was starting to hit it. So we were kind of aware that there was this thing where, country music was starting to kind of blend into the jam band scene and rock and roll and all that. But I remember we all kind of looked around at each other after they played us this song. It's like, are we going to do this country band thing now? But through that, I would say the big three for me getting into country music were Lyle Lovett, Dwight Yoakam, and Steve Earle. Kind of found those three guys all at the same time, and then tried to do as much homework as possible ever since. But I guess the long of it, no, not a country music fan from the get-go, but I do love it now. So
that seems to be such a common theme in Nashville. People come from all different backgrounds, contributing to the bands, on tour and live music. You mentioned your brother, Matt. Sorry, Matt, for reaching out to your brother and not you, but we had a bunch of drummers on here already. So I figured we'd go to keys and guitar, but
get over it, man. It's all good.
We'll get him on here down the line for sure. So we're going to get to the brotherhood there too, but you guys are also in a project called Rude Music. Is that just the two of you guys, or are there a few other players in there as well?
So it's the two of us, and then two of our best friends, a guy named Marty McMillan who lives here in Nashville. He's a master luthier. He builds guitars. So Macmillan Guitars is the name of that brand, and he does phenomenal work and also just a great guitar player. And then childhood best friend of mine, Tyler Bartram, who still lives up in the Baltimore area. But that kind of started as the band I was talking about earlier. We knew that was everyone was going their separate ways, and Matt and I knew for quite a while that we needed to move on. But that's really tough when many people have made huge life changes and all moved to town together and that whole thing. So basically, in the course of knowing we needed to leave, we finally started writing some songs that was just for the two of us. Because previously it would be we'd write for that band. It was great, but we never really just wrote for us. Maybe we were a little scared of whether we'd be good at it or not. Turns out it was very natural, and it led into us doing our own project. And I think in a world with 13 months, we might be able to give it a little bit more time. But
How are you guys juggling it right now? I mean, your tour schedule is absolutely crazy with Lainey. I mean, how are
Yeah.
you able to promote it?
Yeah, it's I would be lying to you if I said I was kicking that project in the bud as hard as I could, but it's I think by the same token, um, Lainey's having her moment right now, and I think it's just the beginning in a lot of ways. And we can always come back to, you know, if it's a studio thing that we just get together and make records in the studio and play some local gigs here and there, or go on some weekend runs at some point. I'm open to whatever, but just it is a little bit tricky when I think our next weekend off is Thanksgiving,
Ooh.
So,
Yeah, you guys are on like a rocket ship right now with Lainey Wilson. Do you guys feel that growth? Do you feel the excitement, or is it just kind of a blur? You just your day to day?
I mean, it is funny just thinking back on um being in bands and playing with all sorts of different artists, and you're around for when people have really great things happen to them, and you have cool things happen to you along the way. And I think back to the celebrations we had 7 years ago because you know we met someone at a gig that liked our show, and that you know I think if we had the time on our hands, sorry, let me phrase that. If Lainey had any time to celebrate all the things that seem to be happening on a weekly basis, there would be no time to do the next thing. I mean, it is pretty wild. Just that there's there hasn't been a time to like catch our breaths and kind of reflect on what's going on. But I always go back to when we first started playing shows again, um, 2021. After sitting out a lot of the pandemic, like um, many people, it's like I think the first one was in rural Arkansas, and I believe Things a Man Ought to Know had just gone maybe number one on Sirius, and just seeing a scattering of people singing along was like this huge jolt of a moment for everyone on stage. Especially after all that time off. But and then literally every week since then, it's felt like you add 50 people singing along, and it's just really I feel really lucky to have witnessed it all in real time, kind of unfold week after week.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about playing like the county fair, and you guys just did a run in New York on like the Today Show, Jimmy Fallon. I mean, that has to be pretty significant. That's like, all right, you're almost at the I've made it point.
Yeah, I mean, the that TV stuff, that presents a different set of fun, exciting challenges. Usually based on the logistics. I don't know how they pull it off a lot of the time, but they all do it every day and every night. But yeah, I mean, we've certainly gotten to do some really cool things with Lainey, and there's some really cool things on the horizon too. It's just basically just hang on and check the schedule once a week and see what else they can even throw at us at this point. so,
So how did you and Matt get linked up with Lainey in the first place?
so it was I do like this story. Basically, I want to say it was 2017, 2018, something like that. I was playing some gigs with a buddy of mine. His name is Jason Martin, and he lives here in Nashville. Great guitar player, good friend. And it's like full on riff rock, like the furthest thing from commercial country music you could come up with here in Nashville. And I think I remember seeing him for the first time. That's kind of why I would have really wanted the gig. I was like, man, this would be a cool guy to just be able to play with. A few months later, the call came in. He needed someone for a last minute gig. I think it was at this place called the Nick in Birmingham, which is like a rock bar underneath the highway, like, and
Dive bar.
I could do it. I got the stuff together, and kind of ended up being the guy he would call. He wanted to do a record, so I'd recommended my brother on drums. Let's go make, rock and roll record together. That'll be fun.
And they must have loved that, right? It's like one-stop shopping, and you guys know each other. You already know how to read each other. It's going to help the recording process quite a bit.
We certainly think so. That a lot of chemistry built up over years of family tension and struggle. I just kid. We're the closest of friends, but
well, with that, it's got to come a little bit of headbutting from time to time, right?
Really, the only time we headbutt would be in a studio situation, like if it's a rude music session and we really need to get the right thing. It'll come out a little bit, but that's a very constructive headbutting. Anyways, so we're gonna go make a record, and Jason wants to do it with this guy Aslan Freeman, who is now Lainey's band leader, kind of the musical director of the group. And he had just been kind of writing with Lainey, and maybe he was in the process of producing her first EP, the one before she got her record deal. And it's like it's not like this thing happens over a few weeks. It's talking like 3 years for all this to unfold of hey, we need something for a Lainey gig. And then I think I got the call first. Maybe he couldn't do a couple. Finally, at the beginning of 2020, I had been playing with her a little bit, but she was going to do a tour with Justin Moore and Tracy Lawrence, and Aslan asked me if I could do the tour, and I said, yeah, man. And the drumming situation had been a little in flux, so I was like, well, me and my brother got this project we're also trying to work on, so if you can get him on the gig, that might make it that's a no-brainer. And I think he was going to call him for it anyway at that time. But, we got in a couple months, and then obviously everything went away for a while, except a few live streams. But, it's crazy to think that it's been over 2 years at this point. So
that is pretty wild. So did you guys hit it off with Lainey right away? Was there a little bit of a learning curve? It's got to be weird when you start out as like a hired gun situation. You must feel the heat a little bit. It's obviously wildly competitive in Nashville. Did you really feel like you had to sell yourself and preserve your position, or was it pretty relaxed?
Well, I'll tell you what, the very first gig I ever did with Lainey, it was, talk about like both sides of a spectrum. She was going to sign her record deal that week, and we were playing this, I'm not going to name names because this is still the weirdest gig I've ever been on, and everyone in the band agrees.
Man, all right, next time we're doing this at a bar, so we get you to name some names,
Yeah. But yeah, it went so weird, not because of anything on stage, just because like the circumstances of this gig were so off the wall that like I was convinced I wouldn't get the call again, just because they would think, oh, he remembers what happened there.
All right, you got to give us some detail. You don't have to name the venue or whatever, but you got to give us some details here.
Man, I just a kind of a pool party gone haywire is how I would describe this. And that wasn't the gig itself. But, even still, aside from, that whole thing, it was like a complete thrown together band at that time. And Aslan was even playing drums last minute. So it just like, I guess to answer your question, when I met Lainey, things are starting to really move, but I think still in that place where trying to find the steady cast of people, and also needing to build up a calendar to where you don't have guys and girls hopping between 10 different gigs, which is what a lot of us do for a long time, trying to piece it all together. So I think over the next few times I would get that call, I get to know her a little better each time. But
Did the pool incident bring you closer together when all was said
that
and done?
it actually did, absolutely.
It sounds like a party I want to be at, frankly, but I can see you rolling your eyes. So I don't, maybe
Yeah,
not for the band.
Maybe we'll do anything twice, that sort of a thing. But what I can say about Lainey, completely, and what I did notice from the get-go is just she's the hardest working person I've ever met. And obviously, uh, huge amount of talent, a great singer, great songwriter, great personality. But it makes it so much easier to work hard for someone who works as hard as she does, and really grateful for that. And you being in Nashville and any music city, and there are so many of them here and all over the world. I don't necessarily think it's the correlation of the great talent always translates into that success, obviously, but when it's all clicking together at the same time, it's really cool to witness. And I think that's certainly the case for her. And I'll stop bragging here in a sec, but I think, just like I was talking about earlier with finding country music a little later in the game, I think as I'm saying I was guilty of it in my old band. A lot of people found country music as kind of this lane to get into because it's huge right now, and maybe we'll make a country record and then give the crowd our real rock stuff after that once we get our foot in the door.
I've heard that before.
I'm not knocking that, and if you can pull that off, then man, go get it. But
sure.
What's so refreshing about Lainey is that there's no plan to fool everyone and then switch lanes. I mean, this music is who she is. It's authentic to her, and it also has a really wide appeal. So to me, it's like really rewarding being a part of. Even though it might not be exactly my story in song, it is her. It is exactly who she is, and that's really cool to help bring to a crowd, three nights a weekend.
Well, there's a sincerity behind her music and her live performances. It doesn't feel like it's a put on. It doesn't feel like a show. And I know I can't get you to name names here because you wouldn't even tell me about the pool party, but there are definitely some people you got to see in Nashville. Does it eat you up a little bit? You talked about like the bait and switch, or you talked about the more for just in general as a very talented musician. Clearly, it's gotta irk you in some ways to see the success that other people are having when they're really not doing the work that you guys are necessarily doing.
Man, yeah, that's a lot. There's a lot in there. I try not to get hung up on a lot of that stuff because, I'm well past thinking that I know the way any of this works. Even the longer I do it,
Yeah.
And obviously there's a wide range of tastes out there, and a lot of different people behind the scenes making a lot of things happen. But what I would say is now more in the playing world, as a hired gun and a band member and all that. It's nice not having to worry about a whole lot of that as much. Granted, it certainly when I guess, like I just said, when you're working for someone who you feel like really is the real deal and checks all those things, it's pretty cool.
Makes it a little easier, I suppose.
Oh yeah.
Very cool. We talked about obviously the trajectory that Lainey's on, and you guys as the band. Are you worried about job security in Nashville, or is it starting to feel more and more like a family, like you guys are in this thing together?
Oh, it's totally a family. that being said, I mean, I try to bring a certain level of nerves and a healthy dose of looking over your shoulder always. That's just the nature of, I think, what we all do. But really my experience in Nashville has been much more rooted in people helping each other out than trying to play the politics thing. And maybe that's going on for certain players, and but I don't think I'm good enough at deception to do the house of cards thing. I just try to do what I do and be a good person, a good hang, and try to make some music with some folks. So
But you guys talked about the run that you're on right now. You said your next day off is probably going to be around Thanksgiving time. Are you looking for a break, or do you thrive on this kind of a schedule?
it's we're definitely coming into one of those go time type of months, couple months really. I try not to ask the universe for time off, because right before the pandemic, I remember thinking, man, I'm getting really burnt out. I could use a weekend off, and I got it.
Sometimes, better when dreams don't come true, as they say.
Yeah. So I mean, I think a breather here and there would be nice, but like I said, it's you wait. People work as hard as they can and do so much to try to end up in a position like this for where Lainey, what she's doing right now. So it's while a little taxing on certain things, sleep and being away from home and the loved ones. I do think there's an understanding of everyone involved that we're going and getting this thing right now. So
That's awesome. I'm fired up because you guys are actually going to be at the Crystal Palace in Bakersfield on November 17th, right before your big break. That is a super iconic venue. I'm really hoping to catch that show. What does it mean? I know you're not a traditional country music fan, but playing some of these iconic venues as you guys grow and grow, it's got to have a pretty good feeling for you as a musician.
Well, man, Buck is one of the dudes that got into and really fell in love with that whole Bakersfield sound. Him and Merle. I've never been to the Crystal Palace yet, so I've heard nothing but cool stories about it. So I'm looking forward to that one.
It's going to be a lot of fun, man. I know you're super busy. I really appreciate you taking the time. Kevin Nolan, Rude Music, and Lainey Wilson. Let's see, guitar, bass, mandolin, keys, harmonica, anything else? Tap dancing? What do we got?
Man, I hope not anytime soon, but we'll see.
How can people find you if they want to follow your journey? You got some great content on your socials. What's your handle?
Yeah, it's KG_Nolan. G is my middle initial for Gordon. Yeah, Instagram is probably the main place where I do most of my stuff, but you can also find we got a little Rude Music YouTube page set up where we put out some stuff every once in a while, and come check in.
I liked your Mrs. Robinson rendition. That was a really cool one.
Thanks, man. That's from gotta plug the Trio Jazz record. I can't believe I forgot. A lifelong ambition of making something like that album, which we recorded right like the weekend before things started up with Lainey last year. So that was the pandemic aggression, and had to get it out and then go play to the country music masses.
There you go. Well, I think you're going to be doing a whole lot of that in your career. Hopefully we get you back on here. Kevin, thank you so much for taking the time, man. I really appreciate it.
Hey, thank you, man. I appreciate you having me.
Go easy. Good luck on the road.
Right on. Thank you.